بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Okay, so today's session, well, first of all, I apologize for the delay. Today's session will be relatively brief because there's just one topic that I want to talk about, but it has really big, severe implications. So I just want to go into a little depth in that, and so as not to overburden anyone. I just want to focus on that topic for today. So I don't think it'll take the entire 1 hour. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Our topic for today is the second coming of Isa alayhi salam. This was actually inspired by our esteemed Imam, Hafiz Farhan. So, may Allah Ta'ala reward him. So there's a few ahadith today. The chapter in Mishkat about the second coming of Isa alayhi salam actually only has, I think, 3 narrations, 3 or 4. So I just have all of them up here and then we'll just go through them. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم والذي نفسي بيده ليوشكن أن ينزل فيكم ابن مريم حكما عدلا فيكسر الصليب ويقتل الخنزير ويضع الجزية ويفيض المال حتى لا يقبله أحد حتى تكون السجدة الواحدة خيرا من الدنيا وما فيها ثم يقول أبو هريرة رضي الله عنه فاقرأوا إن شئتم وَإِن مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا لَيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ. And this hadith is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. So Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I think this might be the first time we encountered Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu so far. So who can tell me something about Abu Hurairah? What do we know about him? Right, okay, so he was the most prolific narrator of hadith. I wouldn't say that he memorized the most hadith though, because he himself admits that there was one sahabi who surpassed him in his knowledge of hadith. Does anyone know who that is? Yeah? No, not exactly, but that's a good guess. He says that no one knew more hadith than me than Abdullah bin Amr bin As. This was a sahabi who was a great scholar who would write hadith from the very beginning. He had a collection of his hadith that he compiled in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. So his name was Abdullah bin Amr bin As radiyallahu anhu. But he didn't end up narrating so many hadith because he moved to Egypt. In Egypt, there weren't nearly as many students as where Sayyidina Abu Hurairah was. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu was in Medina, which was a center of learning. Whereas Egypt wasn't really established so much at that time, at least as in a seat of learning. So Abdullah bin Amr bin As wasn't able to pass as much across of his knowledge as Abu Hurairah was, radiyallahu anhu. So anyway, Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrates the most hadith. Does anyone know how many he narrates? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, mashallah, how much is it? Yeah, 5,374. Very good, mashallah. So that far outnumbers anyone else. The closest person after him is Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu anhu, who narrates about 2,630, I think. So you can see that Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu far outnumbers, his ahadith far outnumber that of even the person at number 2. So anyway, he narrates a lot of ahadith. He became Muslim in the 7th year. He was only with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for about 3 or 4 years. Yet despite that, he would spend every waking moment of his day with the Prophet ﷺ. And despite the limited time he was with the Prophet ﷺ, he acquired a vast amount of hadith. And he says that he would maintain the company of the Prophet ﷺ ala shib'i batni. And then there's 3 explanations of that are given by the commentators. But one or two of them I'll share with you. One of them is that he wouldn't even worry about food or anything else. He would basically be at the brink of starvation, but he would push aside any natural need that he had to eat in order to acquire hadith. Okay, so anyway, Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that by him in whose hands my soul is, surely Isa alayhi salam, the son of Maryam, will soon descend amongst you and will judge mankind justly, i.e. as a just ruler. He will break the cross and kill the pigs, and there will be no jizya. Money will be in abundance so that nobody will accept it. And a single prostration to Allah Ta'ala will be better than the whole world and whatever is in it. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu added, if you wish, you can recite the verse of the Quran. And the verse means, I recited in the beginning, that and there is none of the people of the scripture, meaning the Jews and Christians, except that they will believe in him before his death. And on the day of judgment, he will be a witness against them. And this hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. Okay, so what this is saying basically is that Isa alayhi salam will return. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is swearing by Allah Ta'ala, saying that there's absolutely no doubt that Isa alayhi salam will return to earth. And then he'll do a couple of things. This hadith lists the various things that he's going to do. فَيَكْسِرُ الصَّلِيبِ, he'll break the cross. وَيَقْتُلُ الْخِنْزِيرِ, he'll kill the pig. And وَيَضَعُ الْجِزْيَةِ, and he'll abolish the jizya tax. Now, what connection do any of these things have to one another? Are they just sort of disparate tasks that he'll do individually or separately? Yeah, very good, mashallah. So Isa alayhi salam will do these things, as was mentioned, that فَيَكْسِرُ الصَّلِيبِ, the crucifix, the cross, is a symbol of Christianity. It's a symbol of the religion. So Isa alayhi salam will come back not as a Christian. So both the Muslims and the Christians both agree that Isa alayhi salam is going to come back. But the Muslims and Christians, they both differ over like what religion he'll follow. So the Christians say that he'll come back and he'll uphold Christianity, whereas we have a very different narrative. We say that actually Isa alayhi salam never preached the Trinity, never preached the tenets of Christianity, never preached anything that they advocate or that they believe. Rather, he was a Muslim. And hence when he comes back, he'll also uphold Islam. And then any symbolism of Christianity, of the religion that was attributed to him, he'll totally remove any of that symbolism. So the first thing he'll do, or one of the main things he'll do, is he'll break the cross. Because he wants to show people that he has nothing to do with any of those beliefs that are attributed to him. Okay, so that shows that at least on a symbolic level, or perhaps on a theological level, he's distancing himself from the beliefs of Christianity. Right? So you can say, فَيَكْسِرُ الصَّلِيبِ, the first one is at a theological level. Is everyone with me? Or a symbolic level? You can say both. وَيَقْتُلُ الْخِنْزِيرِ, and he'll kill the pigs. So this shows that he's not merely going to theologically align with Islam, but rather he'll follow the Sharia of the Prophet ﷺ. In the Sharia of the Prophet ﷺ, in our Sharia, is it permissible to eat pig? Absolutely not, right? So Isa alayhi salam will come as a follower of our Sharia, and he'll submit to that, and then he'll preach to everyone else that this is the Sharia that we must submit to. So both on a theological level, or a symbolic level, فَيَكْسِرُ الصَّلِيبِ, breaking the cross, and on a level of jurisprudence, submitting to the Sharia, both ways he'll come as a Muslim. وَيَضَعُ الْجِزْيَةِ, he'll abolish the jizya. Okay, so first of all, what is jizya? Can someone tell me? Yeah? Yeah, very good. So jizya is a tax that non-Muslims pay in a Muslim state. Muslims pay zakah and they have duties to fight for the army and things like that, whereas non-Muslims are exempted from those things. All they need to do is just pay a tax. So that's called the jizya. So Isa alayhi salam will abolish the jizya. Now, why do you think that is? What do you say? Right, okay, so very good. So then, by that time, inshallah, the Christians will see him and then they'll become Muslim. Isa alayhi salam will tell them that you need to become Muslim. Remaining Christian is not an option anymore, right? Because I don't advocate any of these beliefs that you're attributing to me. So then there'll be no need for jizya anymore. Jizya will be abolished. And then this is also a time of prosperity. There will be wealth in abundance, وَيُفِيضُ الْمَالِ, and there'll be so much wealth that no one will even be able to accept it. That means that if you want to donate money to charity, if you want to help poor people, There'll be so much wealth that there won't even be poor people that you'll find. You won't be able to help anyone financially because everyone will be well off. حتى تكون السجدة الواحدة خيرا من الدنيا وما فيها. And one sajda, one single prostration will be better than the dunya and everything therein. Okay, so what does that mean? Doesn't that already hold true now? Isn't one sajda better than the dunya? Yeah. So then what relevance does this statement have with the rest of the hadith? Okay, so that's very good. So then also like the practice of Isa alayhi salam, he'll do the same ibadat, so he'll be praying salah and stuff. That's very good. Anything else? Yeah. Okay, very good. So he's saying that it's going to be a time of fitna, but actually Isa alayhi salam, when he comes, he'll kill Dajjal. And after, the fitna will be, well, for some time it'll be like he'll vanquish the fitna. Then there's also the fitna of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, but that'll eventually subside as well. And then it'll be a time of prosperity, right? So it means that not only will there be, like, people will be financially well off, but also people's hearts, some commentators explain it this way, that people's hearts will incline towards Islam as well, such that people will actually regard one sajda to be better than the dunya and everything therein. Okay, so right now we all agree, at least at a theoretical level, that one sajda is better than the dunya. But do you think that Muslims by and large actually, do they uphold this in their hearts? Unfortunately, many of us don't. We wouldn't give the whole world for just a single sajda, right? But because this is just like, we're creatures of tangibility, we see what's in front of us, and then it's hard to really visualize those metaphysical aspects. Whereas in the akhirah, when people are in their graves, that will become very clear. But anyway, people actually begin to uphold Islam in their hearts to such an extent that they'll actually regard one sajda to be better than anything else. Okay, so this is our first hadith about the coming of Isa alayhi salam. And then Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu recites the ayah, وَإِن مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا لَيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ. That there's not a single person from the people of the book except that they'll believe in Isa alayhi salam before his death. Okay, so there's two different tafsirs of this ayah. I'll just mention one of them. I'll mention the dominant tafsir that most of the mufassirin uphold. They say that this refers the mawtihi before his death. That refers to the death of who? Isa alayhi salam. So Isa alayhi salam will come back, and he'll live for, some time. Narrations mention about 40 years, but there's different narrations. He'll live for some time, and then eventually he'll pass away. So then when he comes in that time, the people of the book they'll believe in him. The Christians, primarily, they'll believe in him, they'll accept him. So there's not a single person from the people of the book except that they'll believe in him before his death, meaning they'll believe in Isa alayhi salam before his death. Okay, وَيَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ يَكُونُ عَلَيْهِمْ شَهِيدًا. And Isa alayhi salam will be a witness against Christians who misattribute things to him on the Day of Judgment. Okay, so this is our first hadith. There's two more, pretty similar. Then we'll go into a discussion that's related to this. Second hadith. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم والله لا ينزلن ابن مريم حكما عادلا فلا يكسرن الصليب ولا يقتلن الخنزير ولا يضعن الجزية ولا تتركن القلاص فلا يسعى عليها ولا تذهبن الشحناء والتباغض والتحاسد ولا يدعون إلى المال فلا يقبله أحد. So Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that I swear by Allah that the son of Mary will certainly descend as a just judge. He will definitely break the cross, he will kill swine, he will abolish jizya. Okay, so up till this point, it's completely familiar. We just did this. Now here's a new part. The young she-camel will be left such that no one will go towards it. Spite, mutual hatred, and jealousy against one another will certainly disappear. And when he summons people to accept wealth, وَلَا يَدْعُوَنَّ إِلَى الْمَالِ. When he summons people to accept wealth, no one will be able to do so. Okay, so the first part of the hadith we already understand because we just did it. What does the second part of the hadith mean? What does it mean that a she-camel will be left? No one will pursue camels. Very good. You're going to say something? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there's so much wealth, as the first hadith actually explicitly stated. There's so much wealth that no one will need to pursue these young camels. And so this is like a little bit hard for us to contextualize because we don't really think of wealth in terms of camels. We have to keep in mind that this is like 7th century Arabia, and then camels were one of the most prized forms of wealth. And then people would do anything they could to acquire a camel. We can think of it as like somebody fills the parking lot with a bunch of Corvettes for free with the keys on the driver's seat, unlocked. They say, go ahead and take it. Now, would anyone be sitting here 30 seconds from now? You? Because you can't drive, you don't have a license. Yeah. No one. I would probably go too. So no one would be sitting here. But then imagine that we were all so otherwise preoccupied, or we all had so much wealth that we didn't even need to go and take a Corvette if it was being offered to us. Can you imagine that? But at this time, there'll be so much prosperity that people won't even have the desire to do that. Another explanation of this part, that the she-camel will be left, is it ties into the first explanation. There'll be no one to distribute zakah to. Why is that? Because there'll be so much prosperity. No one will fall under that nisab, that metric for measuring somebody's wealth in the Sharia. Okay, that part is pretty straightforward. Now the next one, spite, mutual hatred, jealousy against one another will certainly disappear. So not only is it going to be a time of financial prosperity, but also sometimes people might be financially well off, but they have a bunch of internal problems. They're having problems in their marriage, or they have enemies that they are constantly looking over their shoulder for. So there's going to be no spite, no hatred, no jealousy, nothing like that. So not only will it be a time of financial prosperity, but it'll be a time of people's hearts being united as well. And when he summons people to accept wealth, no one will be able to do so. This hadith is narrated by Sahih Muslim. Okay, last hadith. Abu Zubair narrates that أنه سمع جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله عنهما يقول سمعت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول لا تزال طائفة من أمتي يقاتلون على الحق ظاهرين إلى يوم القيامة. قال Okay, so Jabir bin Abdullah radiallahu anhu reported that he heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that a group of my people, it's a section, not my translation, a group of my people will continue to fight for the truth, and they will prevail until the day of resurrection. So what this is saying is that there will always be some people who are following the true path. So we talked about in times of fitna, everyone is going to be confused, and there are going to be different groups and things like that. But at least we know it's not going to be, all is not lost. There'll always be one group that's going to be upholding the truth. And that group can be very large. It might be the largest group, the Jama'atul Muslimin. Okay, so they'll prevail until the day of resurrection. He said, Jesus, son of Mary, would then descend, and the Muslims' commander would invite him to come over and lead them in prayer, but he would say, no, some amongst you are commanders over others. This is the honor from Allah for this ummah. This hadith is narrated by Muslim. Okay, so basically it just reiterates the same thing, that there'll always be people who uphold truth. And Isa a.s. will come, and then who will follow him? These same people who uphold truth, right? The Muslims. And then Isa a.s. will be invited to be their imam. And he said, no, Allah Ta'ala you already have an imam. I'll let him lead the salah. So that's what's going to happen. And this is an honor from Allah Ta'ala for this ummah, that there'll be people from this ummah who will actually lead a prophet in salah, right? We know this happened in the past too. There are actually some Sahaba who led the Prophet ﷺ in salah. Does anyone know who? Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. But when the Prophet ﷺ came, then he sort of stepped aside and he let the Prophet ﷺ take over the reins. So in the final illness of the Prophet ﷺ. So you can say that in a sense he was leading the people, but Nabi ﷺ was leading him, kind of. But there's another one. Sorry? Not that I know of. Yeah? Ubay ibn Ka'b? Again, not that I know of. It's possible. But the one that I had in mind was, yeah? Very good. Abdurrahman ibn Auf. Abdurrahman ibn Auf is one Sahabi who had the unique distinction of being someone to lead the Prophet ﷺ in salah. Abdurrahman ibn Auf. He's one of the 10 Sahaba promised Jannah. He is very known for his generosity. Okay, so up till now, what we have a clear picture that Isa alayhi salam will descend at the ends of times and he'll do all these things that were described in the hadith. Now, this is, as we've been talking about, this is a time of fitna. In a time of fitna, sometimes it's physical strife, but a lot of time it's theological strife and academic strife. So nowadays, people, I guess in this modern era, it began with perhaps in Egypt with Muhammad Abduh, Rashid Rida, and it's continued until this modern age, until our current time. That there has been people who have been questioning such hadith like this, and they've been denying the institution of Isa alayhi salam returning. Okay? So now, what is the problem with this? If somebody believes that Isa alayhi salam returns or doesn't believe that, why is that really a big deal? Yeah? It's a tenet of faith, right? So now the question is that, okay, so if this is a tenet of faith, what forms are tenets of faith? So now this is going to be like a lesson in sort of like Aqidah kind of. Okay, so the second coming of Isa alayhi salam, this is actually a fundamental belief in Islam. It's a tenet of faith. And how did that come about? So in Islam, we uphold what forms are tenets of faith, such that if somebody were to reject one of those things, it would put their iman in question. It's an institution called tawatur. Okay, tawatur means that whatever that idea is, whatever that belief is, it was mass transmitted. Okay, so everything in the Quran has come to us through tawatur. In the definition of Quran, al-Kitab al-Munazzal ala al-Rasul al-Maktub fi al-Masahif al-Manqul ilayna naqlan mutawatiran bila shubhatin. The very definition of Quran is that recitation, that book that has been transmitted to us through tawatur. So tawatur means that it's been mass transmitted. And there's some ahadith and many beliefs that have been transmitted through tawatur as well. So what does that mean? That means that, for example, if, okay, let's say somebody is coming from out of town or they live in some other suburb or something and they want to come to Dar es-Salaam and they want to come tonight for the khatam. And someone tells them that make sure you carpool or make sure you come early because the parking lot is going to be full. In fact, they're doing construction and part of the parking lot is under construction. So there's not as much space as there normally is. So make sure you come early and make sure you carpool. Now this person, maybe like he'll hear from one person that Dar es-Salaam is under construction, but maybe, okay, maybe he'll believe it, but he'll probably believe it even more when he sees it. When he comes here, he'll see the cranes and he'll be like, oh yeah, that guy said it was under construction. Okay, so it shows that when he sees it, he gains a greater level of certainty. Now, what if two people told him? Before he came, two people told him that there's construction, make sure you come early, make sure you carpool, whatever the case is. If two people tell him, then he'll probably have more certainty than if one person told him. Now, what if he gets a call from maybe like 20 friends that have been going to Dar es-Salaam throughout Ramadan, and they all tell him that there's a lot of construction going on, make sure you just keep that in mind. Now, if all these 20 people tell him, do you think he'll have any doubt whatsoever that there's construction? No. Okay, so keep that thought in mind. Now, let's go back to the first scenario. If one person told him that there's construction, then now if he sees it, if he hears that, he'll be like, okay, I'll keep that in mind. Now he comes to Dar es-Salaam, and what if he doesn't see any cranes? What will he say? He'll be like, oh yeah, that person told me there was construction, but I don't see anything. Maybe that person was confused. Maybe he had the date wrong. Maybe they were supposed to start after Ramadan, and this guy got confused. Right? So he can easily come and he'll perhaps dismiss the notion or dismiss the idea that one person told him based on his own experience. Because if one person tells you something, you might believe it, but it's not so certain. Is everyone with me up till this point? Now, what if 20 or 30 people told him that there is construction going on, make sure you keep that in mind. And now he comes here and he doesn't see a crane. Then what will he do? Will he be like, yeah, probably everyone was wrong, maybe they're all mistaken. Will he say that like he said with one person? No. He'll be like, there must be cranes somewhere, maybe they moved them for the khatam night or something. But he'll know with certainty that there must be some cranes somewhere. So can't you see that if 20 or 30 people told him, if a large number of people told him, versus if one person told him, he has a different degree, excuse me, a different degree of certainty? Yes. So this notion is called tawatur. So many people told him that such and such thing is happening. In this case, that construction is happening. That it's not possible that they all made it up. Okay, is everyone with me up to this point? Okay, so that basically is the concept of tawatur. When you hear from so many people, it's not possible that that thing is fabricated. That notion, that idea, that belief becomes undeniable. That's what tawatur is. Let me give you a personal experience from my own life. Maybe I told some of you. So when I was 13, 14 years old, I was enrolled in IAE. I was doing Hifz in Elgin. And I had finished my Hifz. And there was a student in my class who was known to be one of the slowest memorizers in the madrasa. He, when I came there, he was already there for like 4 or 5 years, and then he still wasn't anywhere close to being finished. And basically, I had come. And then he was on the 15th juz. And then I started my Hifz, and then I caught up to him when he was in the 20th juz. So he wasn't going very fast. And then every year, he would say that he wants to finish his memorization by the graduation. And I think I mentioned this last year too. He wanted to finish his memorization by the graduation. And then he was saying that year too, the year that I graduated, 2005. And he was saying that at the beginning of the year. I was like, okay, we'll see. But then let's fast forward 10 months, 11 months. Now the graduation is right around the corner. By this point, he's only on the 24th juz, meaning that he still has 6 left. And he's still saying, I want to finish by the graduation. Now, no one is taking him seriously. Obviously, he's no Speedy Gonzalez himself. So no one really believed him. No one really took him seriously. Then I had already finished. I went to go visit some relatives out of state for about a week. Then I came back. Then I came back, and then he's like, I come back. It's summertime, Fajr is early. I come back like maybe around 7 o'clock or something. Class is at 8 o'clock. So by that point, everyone has already gone to sleep after Fajr, and there's only 1 or 2 people in the masjid, and he's one of them. And then he said, guess what? I'm finishing today. And I was like, what? Like, really? And then I'm like, yeah, good joke. You can't fool me, though. So I thought he was joking. And then other people began to say it, too. He kept on saying it. And joke maybe is funny once or twice, but if somebody says it for like consistently for hours, then it's kind of bizarre. So I was like, why does he keep on saying this? Then I began to ask some other people that he keeps on saying he's finishing. Why is he saying that? They said, because he's actually finishing. And then I was like, what? And then I'm like, I got it. I left for a week. Now everybody has conspired that when I come back, they'll all play a big trick on me, and they'll tell me that the most far-fetched thing possible, that this guy is going to finish. He's finishing his memorization today. He memorized 6 juz in that past, 5 or 6 juz in the past week and a half. And I was like, that's not going to happen. You guys can't fool me. And then people began to come from outside, like friends and relatives, and then I'm like, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, we're his family members, we're his friends. His khatam is today. And then I'm like, what? These people too? How elaborate can this joke be? And I didn't believe it. But then even the teachers were saying it. And then after some point, I realized that all these people together, they couldn't have just conspired to make a trick. Maybe a few friends in my class, they could have conspired together and they could have pulled something off like that. But could all of these people really have been on it together? It's not possible. So this is the idea that, and he ended up, subhanAllah, finishing that day. He memorized those 6 juz in that about week and a half. How? Through the help of Allah Ta'ala, through excessive dua, through very hard work. But it shows that with the help of Allah Ta'ala, with dua, with effort, anything is possible, even the most seemingly impossible things. So anyway, back to the story. Moral of the story is tawatur. So now the idea is that with tawatur, there's so many people who are saying this thing that it's not possible that they could have come together and conspired to just make up a lie. Right? So this is a fundamental concept that sort of forms the underpinnings of all of our major tenets of belief. That any major tenet of belief that we have is something that has been transmitted to us through tawatur. Okay, so we absolutely have no doubt that the Prophet ﷺ did say this thing. Oh. That wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, I don't know why that's happening. Okay, we'll just do it like this for now. Okay, so tawatur means, as you can see on the screen, tawatur means that it was narrated by so many people that it becomes undeniable. I just said that. Okay, many books have been written regarding the fact that the ahadith that talk about the second coming of Isa alayhi salam, these ahadith are transmitted through tawatur. meaning that this is now an undeniable tenet. We can't deny the fact that the Prophet ﷺ did say that Isa alayhi salam is going to come. Have you been with me up till that point? Now let's just say that somebody was sitting in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ and he said something, and we say that, na'udhu billah, somebody says that, I'm not going to believe that, I deny that. Then that person's faith would be in serious question. You're outright rejecting something that the Prophet ﷺ told you. Right? Is everyone with me up till that point? Now, if something is transmitted through tawatur, that means that it's as if we're hearing it from the Prophet ﷺ directly. We have no doubt that he said that thing. Just like if he were sitting in front of us and he were to say something, we would know that he said it. There would be no doubt whatsoever. So if something is transmitted through tawatur, then it's like the same thing. We have absolutely no doubt that he said that thing. So now if somebody rejects that, then that puts their faith in serious question. Okay, as I wrote over there. Now there's a treatise called Aqidat al-Tahawiyya that states the fundamental beliefs of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It just basically states the tenets of faith. It's written by Imam Tahawi. So one of those tenets of faith that it says is that we believe, it's written over here. Can you see that? No? Yes, okay. We believe in the portents of the hour, including the emergence of Dajjal and the descent of Isa alayhi salam from the sky. And this is in Aqidat al-Tahawiyya. That means that since the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the Muslim Ummah as a whole, has accepted this to be a valid statement of the beliefs of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So that means that we have ijma' on the validity of these beliefs that are stated in this book. So now if somebody were to deny any one of those things, then they would be going against the ijma', the unanimous consensus of the Muslims. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, let me discuss some of the modern objections. So now there's some people that have, let's try to put it in presentation mode. Okay, so there's some people nowadays that have begun to question this whole institution. They say that Isa alayhi salam is not going to come down. He's not going to descend. So now what's their basis for doing that? Their primary basis for doing that is the fact that it doesn't make sense to them. They have rational objections to it. So now this begs a much greater question. Are we allowed to dismiss a hadith on the basis of the fact that it contradicts reason? That it contradicts, that we can't reconcile our intellects with it? Are we allowed to reject a hadith on this basis or not? And if so, then what's the scope for it? So this is a very important concept, and this is perhaps one of, maybe if not the biggest, but one of the greater fitnas of our day and age. That people reject a hadith and beliefs of Islam in general on the basis of the fact that they don't make sense to them. Those beliefs don't make sense to them. So this is very consistent with our theme of Kitab al-Fitan and directly applicable to the discussion at hand, the second coming of Isa alayhi salam. So we'll just take a few minutes to discuss this whole concept. That people have objected now to the second coming of Isa alayhi salam. So some of the objections, I just wrote some of them here, not all of them, but just some of them. The hadith that pertain to the nuzul, the second coming of Isa alayhi salam, they contradict what we already know about Isa alayhi salam. That he was extremely gentle, extremely caring, extremely loving. When he comes during his second coming, he will kill the kuffar who reject Islam. They will be given a choice between the sword and Islam. This contradicts the Quran. Whereas Allah Ta'ala tells us there's no compulsion in religion. Okay, he will slaughter the pigs. Why on earth would he do that? Why would he slaughter pigs? So this doesn't make sense to us. So on the basis of objections like this is just some of them, there are some people that have advocated completely rejecting this belief entirely. Okay, is everyone with me up till this point? Okay, so this is problematic on multiple levels. But perhaps the most relevant question at hand is that, can we use reason to reject a hadith or not? And if so, to what extent? Okay, so you can see that these are actually taken from a strong advocate of denying the second coming of Isa alayhi salam. This is what he said. What is he doing? Is he arguing on academic basis, or more on are they more of emotional arguments? Is it more just on the basis of the fact that it doesn't really make sense to him? It doesn't really make sense to him, right? And to anyone else who rejects this institution, it doesn't make sense to them. Okay, so maybe I'll address these inshallah in the coming minutes, but let's just talk about the concept at hand. Oh yeah, one more thing that he mentioned is that in Muwatta Imam Malik narrates all sorts of hadith, but there's no mention of Isa alayhi salam coming again. So that means that it's probably false. Okay, this is a little bit more technical. It's related to books of hadith. But can anyone see the holes in this argument right away without me having to elucidate any further? What's wrong with this last argument about Imam Malik doesn't narrate this hadith? Okay, go ahead. Yeah, exactly. Does Imam Malik say that I'm narrating every single hadith that ever existed? No. How many hadith are in his book? There's difference in the riwayat of it, the renditions of it, but there's about 2,000. And how many hadith are in existence? 2,000? Far more than that. So Imam Malik never stipulates that I'm going to mention every single hadith that's in existence. And if there's a hadith that I don't mention, then that hadith doesn't exist. Right? He doesn't mention that at all. And that's completely just an argument that has no basis whatsoever. Okay, so the question is that, is the hadith of Isa alayhi salam coming, is that a strong hadith or not? Well, as I was mentioning, these ahadith have reached the level of tawatur. Tawatur means it's undeniable. So a mutawatir hadith is the strongest hadith that exists at all. So that concept of Isa alayhi salam coming back, those ahadith are amongst they're of the category of the strongest ahadith that exist. Yeah, it's mentioned in the Quran as well. وَإِم مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ It's the ayah that we mentioned in the beginning. وَإِم مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا لَيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ. And even if something is not mentioned in the Quran, it doesn't mean if it's only mentioned in hadith. The hadith we regard to be an independent source of legislation as well. So if something is not mentioned in the Quran, this thing is. But if it's not, then that's okay too. Okay, so now Imam Malik never did iltizam that he's going to mention all the hadith in existence. Right? So this doesn't make any sense. There's many ahadith that are in Bukhari that aren't mentioned by Imam Malik. Many ahadith in Muslim. So are you going to reject the hadith of Bukhari and Muslim on the basis of the fact that Imam Malik didn't mention it? This argument doesn't make any sense. Okay, these arguments, the first two, okay, before I go on, let's just hear from you. What do you say about it? Yeah?
So for the first one, I
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good, mashallah. Anything else? Is it? Okay, mashallah, very good. So you said there's going to be two sides, the army of Dajjal and the army fighting against Dajjal. There's no gray matter whatsoever. It's going to be pretty black and white. Okay, so then, and of course it's going to be immediately when Isa alayhi salam descends, it's going to be a time of war, time of fighting. Right? Okay, what else? Anything else? Yeah? A little bit louder, please. Okay. Hey, I was asking the questions. So Isa alayhi salam will descend in Damascus. Okay, but anyone want to answer the question that I just posed? How do we make sense of this? Yeah. Exactly. Allah Ta'ala says about the Sahaba, رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُمْ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم. That by nature they were very gentle. But if the time came that the deen of Allah was being compromised, then they could be stern if the occasion called for it. Right? So just because somebody is gentle in nature doesn't mean that he's now incapable of ever defending the deen if the need arises. Okay? And then he will slaughter pigs. I mentioned that before. Yeah? Okay, so he's saying that Christians are supposed to avoid swine as well. Yeah, that too. But also that, as I mentioned in the beginning, Isa alayhi salam wants to show that just not on a theological level, he's submitting to Islam, but also he's submitting to all the various ahkam of Islam as well. Even though that might exist originally in Christian scripture, but it's not something that Christians really uphold today, right? They consume pork without any reservation. So Isa alayhi salam is showing that he's submitting to the Sharia, right? And at the end of the day, Allah Ta'ala is giving him the authority to do so. So, we don't really have any right to object. Okay, now this is the main thing that I wanted to talk about. Dismissing ahadith that don't make sense to us. Okay, so the first thing that we need to understand is by our very nature. Wait, one of the greatest gifts that Allah Ta'ala has given us is our aql, our intellect, right? Through this, basically we've been given superiority over all other animals, all other mammals, and animals in general. We have an aql, we have an intellect. And we're able to deduce many things about this, we're able to recognize right from wrong. But does that mean that our aqls are completely they're unlimited in their scope for reasoning? Or does our aql, our intellect, does it have some limitations as well? Right, it has some limitations as well. So there are different sources. Okay, this is going to be a bit scattered, but hopefully I have some points that will serve as a guide. But there's a lot of things to mention. There's different sources of knowledge within our tradition. One source of knowledge is our senses. We see things, we observe things, and we're able to, find out about those things, right? A lot of the natural sciences, they come from observation, right? Another source of knowledge is our intellect. Human beings, not only can they observe things, but they can also deduce things, right? They can infer things, right? So some sciences like biology, chemistry, physics too, they come primarily from observation. Other sciences, they come from deduction. For example, formal sciences like mathematics, right? So we have our senses, that's one form of information. Another form of gaining knowledge is our intellects. Another form of gaining knowledge is al-khabr al-sadiq, truthful testimony. You hear someone who's obviously saying the truth, telling you about something, and then you find out about that thing as well, right? So, for example, somebody reads the news. You hear that there was such and such event. We all read the news and we heard that, in 2016, Donald Trump was elected. Did anyone actually go and witness the inauguration in Washington, D.C.? None of us did. Oh, I thought someone was raising their hand. None of us did, at least as far as I know, as far as I can see. But yet we all believe that he did, that he got elected. No one doubts that. Why? Because news came to us through truthful sources. It's also reached tawatur as well, that Donald Trump was elected, right? So we don't doubt that. That's another source of information. Is it something that we observed? We didn't observe him getting elected. Is it something that we just rationally inferred? We inferred it, like if we had no other knowledge in front of us, we would just infer that he would be the one to win the election. Most people actually, they thought the opposite, right? So it's not something that can really be inferred. But this knowledge came to us through testimony, truthful testimony, right? Okay, so that's another source of knowledge. Those are three sources of knowledge. And the fourth source of knowledge in our tradition is wahi. Very good. So now, wahi, many of the ulama explain that wahi starts where our rationale, our intellect stop. So Allah Ta'ala, or the Prophet ﷺ, tells us things that we can't rationally deduce ourselves. So angels, can you rationally deduce that angels exist and that angels do this task and that task? Not really. How do we know about them? Through wahi, right? So wahi tells us things that we couldn't have really deduced otherwise. Now Shaykh Nuruddin al-Itr, a very prominent scholar from Syria, he said something really interesting. He said that there's nothing in the deen of Islam that contradicts reason, but there are certain things that are beyond reason, right? There's nothing in Islam that contradicts reason, but there are certain things that are beyond reason. So what do we gain from that? Some of the things that we believe, they're not tangible, they're not observable, we haven't tested those things in a laboratory. Yet we believe them because we have truthful testimony from the Prophet ﷺ. It came to him through wahi, and we believe in those things. For example, has anyone ever tested in a laboratory that angels exist? It's not tangible, yet we believe it through wahi, right? Is that rationally impossible that angels will exist? It's not rationally impossible, it's just something that's beyond reason. It doesn't contradict reason. So again, there's nothing in Islam that contradicts reason, but there's some things that are beyond reason. Okay, so I apologize in advance. This is not a motivational, exciting discussion. It's a very technical discussion, so please forgive me. If you want motivation, then see me afterwards. I'll try to motivate you in some other way. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Now, what if we see things with that premise in mind? What if we see things or come across things that seemingly do contradict reason? Like somebody says that Isa alayhi salam is gentle, so the fact that he's engaging in war, that doesn't make sense to me, I'm going to reject it. So now I just said that there's nothing in Islam that contradicts reason, only things that are beyond reason, but this seemingly, this example at least to some people, it contradicts reason for them. So doesn't there seem to be an inconsistency between the principle I just stated and the example I just gave? There does. So who can resolve this inconsistency? Exactly. The issue now is in somebody's understanding. If somebody has limited understanding, then, that's their problem. That doesn't mean that they can use their limited understanding as a basis to reject things, to reject the deen, right? Let's say somebody is, I was a math tutor for many years, a math teacher. I taught people different things. I taught people pre-calculus, calculus. What if I was teaching somebody calculus and I was teaching them about derivatives or integration, and then somebody says, I can't understand this. Some people, they're not good at calculus. It doesn't make sense. I can't understand this. This whole thing is all made up. It doesn't make any sense. I don't believe in derivatives. I don't believe in integration. So is it really right for someone to do that? Can they dismiss the belief and can they reject the notion of integration or of taking limits? No, that doesn't make sense. What's their problem over here? Is integration, maybe sometimes it's hard to do, but is it beyond reason? No. Does it contradict reason? It doesn't contradict reason either. But this person can understand it. What's that person's problem? He has limited understanding. So do you think it's right for that person to use his limited understanding and reject the notion of derivatives or integration? No, it's not right. So all of us, human beings as a whole, our intellects as a whole are limited. Some people have more limited intellects. Their intellects are limited to a greater extent than others, right? Maybe some people aren't as sharp. So they can't use that now as a basis to reject deen, to reject tenets of deen. Rather, what would be the correct approach if something doesn't make sense to us? We go and we seek guidance from people who are learned, who are understanding, who have less limited intellects than ourselves. We can go and we can ask them and say, hey, this doesn't make sense to me. Can you please explain this to me? Right? That's what we do. But if we are just to reject it outright when we know that it's come through to us through so many narrations that it's as if the Prophet ﷺ said it in front of us, and now we reject it, that puts our iman in danger. It's as if the Prophet ﷺ is saying something to you and then saying, I don't believe that. Na'udhu billah. How can a Muslim actually do that? Okay, so now I just have a few points up here. These points were compiled by a friend and colleague of mine, Mufti Mu'adh from Blackburn in the UK, so please make dua for him. So he says that recently claims have been made by reformists that it's permissible to reject a noble hadith if one feels that it contradicts one's intellect or feels that it contradicts the principles and objectives of Sharia. But however, just like our other faculties, our intellects have limitations as well. Can we hear certain frequencies? There's certain frequencies that are beyond our scope of hearing, right? Can we see certain colors? Can we see infrared light or ultraviolet light? No, they're simply beyond our range of vision. So there's certain things that we can't see, certain things that we can't hear. So similarly, just like our senses have limitations, our intellects also have limitations as well. Anybody that's probably studied through high school or college, we've encountered concepts that are just really difficult. We can't understand. Right? We know that we're limited in some sense. Okay. Now, if this is coupled with the fact that we have been obliged to follow the commandments of the noble Sharia, whatever they may be, we're able to deduce that we are required to follow the commandments of Sharia regardless of whether they fall within the limitations of our intellect or outside the limitations of our intellect. Okay, is that clear up till now? I'm reading fast because in the interest of time. So nothing in the Sharia really contradicts intellect. It might be beyond reason, but it doesn't contradict reason. Now, if it appears to us that it contradicts reason, then we need to seek better understanding. Because perhaps if we seek understanding and we seek clarity, then we'll understand that actually we are just understanding it wrong. And it's just something that's merely beyond reason. And there's many examples of scholars. A scholar might have come and rejected a certain hadith or a certain narration. And he says that doesn't make sense because this and this and this. And then another scholar will come afterwards and they'll say that, well, actually, no, that still is possible because of this. Right? This happens again and again. If somebody reads through, for example, Mizanul I'tidal of Imam Dhahabi, and then reads through Lisanul Mizan of Hafiz ibn Hajar, you'll see in a few places, Imam Dhahabi, he questions certain narrations saying that just doesn't make sense. But then Hafiz ibn Hajar actually says, no, that actually does make sense. If you think about it in this way, it does make sense. There's a couple of examples of that, but in the interest of time, I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so now this last point is very important. If the Sharia were to be based exactly in accordance to our intellect, there would be no aspect of faith, of Iman. And the Sharia would inevitably serve the dictates of our inner desires, our self, our nafs. The Sharia was sent in order to free each individual from the grasp of his nafs. It was not sent to become subservient to the innate self, the nafs. So if we're just to, what is this saying? It's basically saying that if we're just to reject arbitrarily anything that doesn't make sense to us, like that hadith, I don't agree with that. I don't believe that. The fact that men get twice the inheritance as women, that's inequality. I reject that. I uphold equality for men and women. So now what are we making, na'udhu billah, what are we making our guiding principle, the guiding principle that we follow? Not the Quran, not the guidance that Allah Ta'ala sent, not the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ, but actually rather our whims and our desires. As Muslims by very nature, we're required to submit. Now that's not to say if something doesn't make sense to someone, they're not supposed to seek clarity. Of course they are, because then we can gain stronger faith by seeking clarity. But that means that we're not so bold to just merely outrightly reject something that doesn't make sense to us without first looking into it and seeking better understanding. Okay, so now the role of our intellects. These are just a few quotes that my classmate compiled. This is by Imam Bazdawi. وَأَنَّ الْعَقْلَ لَا يَنْفَكُّ عَنِ الْهَوَى فَلَا يَصْلُحُ حُجَّةً بِنَفْسِهِ بِحَالٍ. The aql, the intellect, is not free from desires, not free from our whims. Thus, it can never alone serve as independent evidence. Imam Qurtubi mentions that إِنَّ اللَّهَ سُبْحَانَهُ لَمْ يَبْنِي أُمُورَ الدُّنْيَا عَلَى عُقُولِ الْعِبَادِ. Allah Ta'ala did not base matters of deen, لَمْ يَبْنِي أُمُورَ الدِّينِ عَلَى عُقُولِ الْعِبَادِ. Allah Ta'ala did not base matters of deen upon people's intellects. In the interest of time, I'll just read the English. And He did not promise or warn in accordance to what their intellects expect and understand. Rather, He promised and warned according to His liking. The liking of whom? Of who? Of Allah Ta'ala. And He commanded and prohibited with His wisdom. If everything that the intellect does not comprehend were to be rejected, then the majority of Sharia would be made redundant. Basically, the majority of Sharia would be dismissed. If we just simply dismiss anything that we didn't like. So let's say that me and you, we don't like a certain limited amount, na'udhu billah, of the Sharia. We say that doesn't make sense to us and we reject that, na'udhu billah. Somebody else comes and there's other tenets, other beliefs that they don't accept. So if we consider what everyone doesn't accept and everyone doesn't like and we basically take that into consideration, then what would be left of deen? Nothing really. Okay. Now, Shah Waliullah, this is a very nice quote from Hujjatullah al-Baligha, said, النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أوثق عندنا من عقولنا. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is more reliable to us than our intellect. So this is something very important to understand, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's speaking from wahi. That means that Allah Ta'ala is revealing things to him. So doesn't Allah Ta'ala have knowledge of things that we don't understand? And hence, aren't there things revealed to the Prophet ﷺ that we don't understand? Of course. So now, if the Prophet ﷺ says something, it's a reflection of what Allah Ta'ala revealed to him. So now, if we reject those things, we're rejecting it on the mere basis of what we understand, what makes sense to us. Whereas Allah Ta'ala, of course, has greater knowledge about those things than we do. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so this is one of my favorite quotes. Okay, a few more quotes. وَكُلُّ حَدِيثٍ رَأَيْتَهُ يُخَالِفُ الْعُقُولَ أَوْ يُنَاقِضُ الْأُصُولَ فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ مَوْضُوعٌ فَلَا تَتَكَلَّفْ اعْتِبَارَهُ. Okay, so now this new heading is rejecting a hadith based on reason. So now Imam Ibn al-Jawzi says this, that every hadith that you see contradicting intellect or breaking the principle of Sharia, then know that that is fabricated. Do not exert yourself in considering it. Okay, now, this is what Imam Ibn al-Jawzi says. Passed away in 597. Now, doesn't this seem to be contrary to what I've been saying up till this point? I said, don't reject a hadith based on our intellect. Rather, seek explanation. But this is saying if you see a hadith that goes against your reason, then reject it. Who can reconcile this? Yeah? One more time? Exactly. Very good, mashallah. Man, you know all the answers. You should just come and we should switch places. Mashallah. So very good, mashallah. May Allah Ta'ala increase you in knowledge. So what he's saying is that whose intellect are we talking about? We're not talking about mine and yours. Rather, we're talking about not even that of like a quote-unquote normal alim. We're talking about people who have mastered hadith, people who have memorized tens of thousands of narration, such that hadith have become like basically second nature to them. And now if they have all these ahadith at the top of their head as their basis for assessing things, then now if something that they come across isn't consistent with that vast body of narrations that they already know, then they have the authority now to question that narration. And that is historically what the scholars have done. But it hasn't been just like any like random Joe that's done it. Rather, it's been people that have had the ability to do so. Okay, Imam Suyuti mentions that this is only in cases when وَأَن يَكُونَ مُخَالِفًا لِلْعَقْلِ بِحَيْثُ لَا يَقْبَلُ التَّأْوِيلِ. This is when it contradicts the intellect in such a manner that it can't be reconciled. So many of the times when people reject things on the basis of reason, they reject a certain hadith. In this case, okay, what's the example that like sort of that this whole discussion arose from? Just to make sure that we haven't lost sight of the original discussion. Second coming of Isa alayhi salam, right? So this is directly applicable to that, but in general, you can apply it to pretty much anything. Okay? So Imam Suyuti says this only, first of all, is for those scholars who have the ability to do so, but it's only when it contradicts the intellect in a manner that cannot be reconciled. 99% of the time when people reject a certain narration on the basis of the fact that it doesn't make sense to them, it can be reconciled. And other scholars have offered explanations for like, oh, you're not seeing it in the right light. Rather, if you take this and this into consideration, then it all makes sense. So this is only when it absolutely cannot be reconciled. It's like a logical fallacy. Okay, for example, there's many examples, but I guess it'll just make us go on. We're already like basically we've reached an hour, so I won't go on too much. I apologize. I said that it's going to be short. That's what I had thought, but yeah, this is what happened. It got long. Okay, so Sheikh Muhammad Awama, leading scholar of hadith today, if not the foremost scholar of hadith, he says that the type of intellect that's considered in assessing a hadith is one that is sound, bound by the sharia, free from the clamors of desire and heresy, and free from the contamination of modern society and the atheistic environment. Otherwise, the deen would become a plaything for every deviant and misguided person, under the pretense of holding firm to such statements that mention that the intellect play a role in hadith. And he said, we are now living in times of such thoughts. If we look, for example, at modernist dialogue, is their vantage point from which they accept and reject things the guidance that Allah Ta'ala has given us, or is it the dictates of modern society? It's the latter, the dictates of modern society. So now they'll arbitrarily reject anything that doesn't make sense to them, that doesn't align with what modern society upholds. So now obviously they're going to end up rejecting many things in deen, many ahadith, even some concepts that are stated in the Quran. But now when we say that there are some people whose intellects can serve as a basis for assessing narrations, are we talking about the intellects of these people? No. We're talking about the intellects of those people who are free from basically like this modernist influence, right? That's what Sheikh Muhammad Awama says. Hafidhahullah ta'ala. And on top of that, one of his, basically his protege, Mufti Muhammad Ishaq Bana, he explains that when we're talking about this, we're talking about an intellect that believes in miracles. It's a very important point to note, because if somebody doesn't believe in miracles, then when they hear about the Prophet ﷺ going on Isra wal Mi'raj, does that make sense? So they'll reject it. If they hear about like anything that's miraculous in nature, the Prophet ﷺ splitting the moon, is that like an everyday occurrence? No. So they'll reject that too. So we're not talking about the intellect of somebody who doesn't believe in miracles. Rather, we believe that Allah Ta'ala is powerful over everything. He can do anything. So if He wanted to, He could give a servant, like He could give the Prophet in this case, the power to do something that doesn't normally occur. In this case, it was splitting the moon or traveling to the heavens in a night. It's possible. Is that outside the scope of the power of Allah Ta'ala? Absolutely not. Allah Ta'ala can do that. So Allah Ta'ala can give that ability to a servant at any time He wants. Okay. So now just a few more things. Ibn al-Jawzi says, Now, okay, let me just tell you one thing. Sorry, I'm right at my time, but I'll just go for additional 5 minutes, hopefully. Now, has anybody read any books of Malcolm Gladwell? No? Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, at least you know what I'm talking about. So there's a book that he wrote called Blink. And he talks about split-second decisions that people make. In the beginning of the book, he says that there was a certain artifact, a piece of art that was delivered to a museum. And then they wanted to make sure that the piece of art was authentic, so they called in a bunch of art historians to go and assess that piece of art to make sure that it was authentic. So they went there and they looked at it in detail, they scrutinized every single corner of that artifact, of that piece of art, and then after a long, exhaustive examination, they finally concluded that this is 100% authentic. Do you know what I'm talking about? You remember? Yeah, okay. So yes, they concluded after their exhaustive study that this piece of art was authentic. Now they called in another art historian, another art critic, and he looked at it and in 2 seconds he said, that's a fake. Everyone looked at him in wonder. They said, what? We looked at it in so much detail. For so many days we were scrutinizing every single angle of it. And we concluded that it's not possible that this thing is a forgery. It's definitely authentic. But you just look at it in a few seconds without doing any research, any further study or examination. You're just saying it's inauthentic, it's a forgery right away. How could you do that? And then he's like, no, it just looks wrong. And then sure enough, they looked into it further. And then what do you think ended up happening? They realized that the piece of art was actually a forgery. So this person was such a great, I guess, art historian or whatever, he was able to right away, he sort of had this innate nature, that he was able to right away recognize what is authentic art and what's not. Because when Allah Ta'ala gives that malaka, that ability to certain people, it takes a lot of dedication to their particular field of study, and after extensive dedication, basically dedicating your life to it, then in some people, Allah Ta'ala creates that ability to, in a split second, discern if something is right or wrong. So now with that in mind, this is not limited to art people, to artists, but rather this sort of like it applies to many people across many different disciplines. So Ibn al-Jawzi says, he says, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْحَدِيثَ الْمُنْكَرَ يَقْشَعِرُ لَهُ جِلْدُ الطَّالِبِ لِلْعِلْمِ وَيَنْفَرُّ مِنْهُ قَلْبُهُ فِي الْغَالِبِ. That a rejected hadith, a wrong hadith, the skin of the seeker of knowledge trembles from it. And in most cases, his heart turns away from it. There are other scholars, like Ali ibn al-Madini says something similar, that if there's a hadith that's false, that's inauthentic, then right away, there's like some nur that I don't see in it. In authentic hadith, I see a certain nur. I think it was Ali ibn al-Madini, someone. And in inauthentic hadith, that nur is not there. So you can see that Allah Ta'ala in these people, through their dedication to that particular field of science, field of hadith, Allah Ta'ala created within them an ability to discern right from wrong. But do you think me and you, I mean unfortunately, like we haven't dedicated our lives, our day and night to this study. So do you think that we have that ability, or I mean most people nowadays, and especially the people that are critiquing hadith on the internet and things, do you think that they have the ability, they're like entitled to now reject a hadith on the basis of the fact that it doesn't make sense to them? Absolutely not, right? Allama Biqa'i says in An-Nukut al-Wafiyya that the seeker of knowledge that Ibn al-Jawzi is referring to is one who has perpetually engrossed himself with the ahadith, such that hadith has become like his breathing. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, such that he becomes an expert in the chains of narration, and he has extraordinary mastery with the principles of Sharia, and he was able to distinguish the accepted from the unaccepted. It doesn't refer to every single seeker of knowledge. La likulli talibi ilmin. Okay, so then this is what Allama Biqa'i explains, rahimahullah. He was a student of Hafiz ibn Hajar. He has a very great tafsir as well that we should all check out. It's called, well, actually forget it, but it has a really nice tafsir. I don't want to go into details, then it'll derail our discussion. Okay, so anyway, so that's what Biqa'i explains. Now let's just take, okay, Sakhawi, one more thing and then I'll just conclude after that. So Allama Sakhawi explains that Ibn al-Jawzi intends by this a seeker of sacred knowledge, one who is perpetually engrossed in the text of Sharia. He has profound knowledge of the text of Sharia and their essence and objectives. It doesn't refer to every single person. Right? So let's just take a few examples. So Ishaq bin Rahawayh, he he said, it is as though I'm looking at 100,000 narrations in my books and 30,000 narrations I'm able to recite. Basically, I have familiarity with 100,000 narrations. And from the top of my head, I can recite 30,000 narrations. So Imam Ishaq bin Rahawayh, the teacher of Imam Bukhari, he's someone, of course, that had this ability. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, a contemporary of him, Abu Zur'a al-Razi, rahimahullah, says that Ahmad bin Hanbal had memorized 1 million narrations. Of course, with the different chains of narration, it all came out to 1 million narrations. So this shows that scholars who had, and there's many more, but due to the sake of time, I won't share all these other quotations with you. If somebody wants more detail, just see me afterwards and I'll send you more detail on it, inshallah. But anyway, so scholars like this, who had so much exposure to hadith, they could recite tens of thousands of narrations from the top of their head. Of course, they've developed this innate ability now to assess right from wrong. So if they see a hadith that seemingly doesn't make any sense, they can right away say that, wait, there's a problem with that. And sure enough, they would look at the chain of narration, they would see that there was, for example, a liar in the chain of narration. But right away, just by looking at the text of hadith, they could say that there must be a problem. They would go back, look at the chain of narration, the people who transmitted the hadith, and sure enough, there would be some problem in that. Right? But they're able to discern that from what? From that, their exposure to hadith, from the fact that they dedicated their lives to it, and the fact that they knew so many, and of course that innate ability that Allah Ta'ala had given them. Right? So just like if you read Blink, I guess you get more of an idea. It doesn't mention hadith as an example though, but you can relate it to this. Okay, so I just wanted to share that. The conclusion of this discussion is that we can't, first of all, we all uphold the belief that Isa alayhi salam will come back. Now, we can't, and some people now have challenged that idea. We can't merely arbitrarily reject it, or any other belief or narrations for that matter, on the basis of the fact that it doesn't make sense to us. Rather, what is our course of action, the right course of action? Seek clear if something doesn't make sense to us. Then we say that, as Shah Waliullah said, rahimahullah, that an-Nabiyyu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam awthaqu indana min uqulina, probably the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam knows better. So we say that, okay, I'm not going to outright just reject it. So I'm going to seek clarity. But with that said, does that mean that there are not any incorrect, false, fabricated narrations in existence? Of course there are. But what we have to do is we can't arbitrarily rule something as fabricated on the mere basis of the fact that it doesn't make sense to us. Rather, whose job is it to rule that something is fabricated? Not me and you, but the muhaddithin. So then we defer to the scholars, muhaddithin, who have dedicated their lives to this field, and they have the ability to assess it, to say that whether this makes sense or not. They have the ability to look at the chain of narration and say that, hey, wait a minute, this is fabricated because of such and such defect in the chain of narration. Our mere just reason itself can't be a basis to reject something or not. And if we do have any misunderstanding, something doesn't make sense to us, that's fine. Doesn't mean that makes us evil people. All we need to do though is just to seek clarity, and inshallah through the act of submitting to the wahi, Allah Ta'ala will bring about clarity in our hearts. We ask Allah Ta'ala guide all of us. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu ta'ala ala khayri khalqihi Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
Assalamu alaikum. We will be having a Tajweed workshop in a few minutes. We are noticing the same cars outside every day for the past 10 days, past 5 days. So we know some brothers have not given their keys to have their car moved. So please, if you have not given your keys, please give them right now to the office. Again, a lot of people are coming from far away, from different cities. And, we're going to be the host for them. They're our guests, so we should allow them to park and have easy access to the masjid. Assalamu alaikum, brothers. We're going to be starting the Tajweed workshop. We do not need help in the lobby right now. Inshallah, if we need volunteers to help us out, we'll make another announcement.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, we'll begin the Tajweed workshop. Those that will be participating in the workshop, I just request that we all sit down with the Quran this time. We'll be reading some portions of the Quran together, inshallah. Just sit down with the Quran from the masjid, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihil ameen. Amma ba'd. By the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we were able to go over several rules in Tajweed. We went over the rules of heavy letters and light letters. We talked about the exceptions to those rules, and we talked about gunna in terms of mim sakin and nun sakin. There are other rules as well. I didn't want to keep this class too dry. So we're going to mainly today, what I want to do is I just want to read the Quran together so we can talk about just applying those tajweed rules. One thing to know the rules, another to actually apply them. So inshallah ta'ala, we'll try to apply the rules. Okay, so what we're going to do is, my plan is I want to finish the last 10 surahs in reading them, and I want to read a passage from the Quran as well. So we're going to read Surah Al-Kawthar. If you want to, you can also look at the Quran and read this. It's also shown on the PowerPoint. So if everyone can just repeat after me, whoever's in the workshop, inshallah ta'ala, that'll be perfect. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر. So with Surah Al-Kawthar, one of the primary mistakes one makes is in the beginning. First off, it's inna. So I'm just going to point it out. This is noon mushaddad, correct? This is noon mushaddad, meaning there's a shadda on top of the noon. And because there's a shadda on top of the noon, the rule is that there's going to be one alif ghunna. There's no exceptions to that rule at all. And then there's a mad, you have to stretch it. And then so there's a hamza and then an ayn. So you have to make the hamza sound and then you have to connect it to the ayn. So you have to make them very distinct. You have to say You can't say because there's a hamza. You have to do justice to the hamza and then the ayn. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. And the ta, this is a full mouth letter. So you can't say ta, it's ta. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. So over here, this lam, you can't say fasalli. It's not fasalli because this lam is only read full mouth in Allah's name. In the lafzullah, in the name of Allah. That's the only letter, only word that lam is going to be read full mouth. Other than that, even then there's an exception to that if there's a kasra before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name. But anywhere else, the lam is always going to be la, not la. It's always la. Right? In the English language, it's L. And L is always pronounced full mouth, lion, right? Allah. But in Arabic language, the lam is going to be empty mouth, like la. So over here, sa is going to be, sa is one of the full mouth letters, right? Khussa daqtin qid, khussa, sad. One of the musta'liya letters. And because sad is going to be full mouth, then lam is also going to be empty mouth right after. So we have to make a transition over here. Fasalli, fasalli, and then there's another li. And then there's another full mouth letter, ra. So there's a full mouth, then full mouth. So you have to keep track of all of these. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ إِنَّ شَانِئَكَ هُوَ الْأَبْتَرُ. One common mistake I find a lot in this last ayah is people say inna shaniyaka, inna shaniyaka, niyaka. Now when looking at it, there's no ya over there. After the noon, there's a hamza, and hamza, the makhraj of hamza is from the lowest portion of the throat. That is the sound it makes. So you can't say shaniyaka because you're changing into a ya, and this is a major mistake. Inna shani'aka huwal abtar. So abta, these are all empty mouth letters, and then there's a ra, which is full mouth. So again, there's a transition. Inna shani'aka huwal abtar. One more time. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ إِنَّ شَانِئَكَ هُوَ الْأَبْتَرُ. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Shall we be reading the next surah now? قل يا أيها الكافرون. So one thing mainly what happens over here is to say قل يا, right? There's no qalqala, there's no double sound in the lam. It's just قل and then ya. قل يا أيها الكافرون. And careful not to say kafirun, kafirun. It's a very smooth sound, one sound. قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد. One thing to be careful for, alhamdulillah, it's written in the Quran, these rules, but then the mad, right? The squiggly line after wala, and then there's a squiggly line after ma, right? That refers to that the letter, that word should be stretched for 3 alifs. 1, 2, 3, 3 alifs. That's what 3 alifs means. It's just this. It's not 3 seconds. It's called 3 alifs, right? So we have to make sure you say wala. You have to stretch that, and then it's not ma a'bud. Also, it's wala antum, and then after that, it's a. You have to make the a, because after tum, it's kind of hard to say a, because the ma makhraj is from the lips. It's the meeting of the wet portions of the lips. And then immediately you have to go back to the throat, because the ayn is the middle portion of the throat. So there's switching over here. So it's very hard. But you have to keep track of every single letter. We'll read this ayah one more time. وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدْتُمْ So the question naturally may arise that after ana there's an alif. So why did I say wala ana and why didn't I say wala ana abidum? Again, this is how the Quran is written. Ana means I. Ana means I, but how it's written in the Arabic language is with an alif. Alif, it's written hamza, noon, and then there's an alif. Ana. But it's pronounced ana. Anywhere in the Quran when a word comes like that, just as ana, then it's going to be pronounced ana, na, ana. And this is just how the word itself is written. Sometimes you'll find a circle on top of it, but it's not filled in. That just means that you're not supposed to stretch the word over there. You'll find that in Surah Al-Daha. So over here is wala ana. So read this one more time. Wala ana abidum ma abadtum. Again, make sure there's the green over here. I'm sorry, I don't have my laser pointer today. But the wala ana abidum ma. What rule is this? Anyone remember what rule this is? The green is colored in. It's not. This isn't mean mushaddad. What? Huh? Idgham. Idgham. Which one? There's mim sakin and nun sakin. Remember how I said that tanween? Tanween is just another way of saying nun sakin, right? You see abidumma. You see that tanween on top of the dal? That's a dhammatain. You see that? Do you see that tanween? Right? Tanween. There's two fathas, two kasras, or two dhammas. Do zabar, do zair, do pesh. So on top of this, there's a dhammatain. There's two dhammas, which is just tanween for dhamma. That's another way of saying nun sakin. So nun sakin, the idgham rules, right? It's divided into two. There's the complete and there's the incomplete. Complete one, there's two letters. I'm just going to say this quickly. So the complete idgham is lam and ra. When you see a lam or ra after nun sakin or tanween, then there's going to be complete idgham. Will there be ghunna? There's going to be no ghunna in complete idgham. Example is mir rabbi. Min is min rabbi, but you connect it becomes mir rabbi. There's no ikhfa, there's no idgham, there's no ghunna. I'm sorry, there's idgham, there's no ghunna. Another example is waylun li kulli. Waylun li kulli. It's waylun li kulli. But it's completely merged together such that you don't hear the noon anymore. You don't hear the noon, but there's no ghunna as well. Waylun li kulli. That's complete idgham. Incomplete idgham, there's four letters. Ya, waw, mim, and noon. And what comes after this? Ya, waw, mim. Mim is right after. Because mim is after a noon sakin, there's going to be idgham. Idgham naqis, incomplete idgham. And because there's incomplete idgham, there's going to be ghunna. So this is idgham nun sakin. You see the mim after, so you think it's mim sakin. But there's the tanween means it's nun sakin. After that, there's there's only that rule right there. So we'll read this ayah one more time. وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدتُّمْ. Make sure you read abidum, not abidum. Abidum, because this is the word is abid. Abid means a worshipper. Wala ana abidum ma abadtum. Yeah, it's one of the only. Some exceptions are in the Quran. Ana is one of them. Ana is always pronounced ana, not ana. Yeah, ana is one of the exceptions. There's a few of them in the Quran, handful. You can count them on your fingers. So ana is one of them. وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ. لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينٍ. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح. So again over here, nas. This is a na, which is an empty mouth, and then sa, which is a full mouth. So nas. You can't say nas, because you can't give noon a full mouth. See, this is very technical. You can't say nos, you have to say nas. You start off empty, you end off full. Because noon is not one of the full mouth letters. It's one of the mustaf'ila, one of the light, empty mouth. But sad is one of the full mouth letters. So yeah, it's just full mouth, empty mouth. They both come from the exact same makhraj, pronounced the exact same way, just one is full mouth, one is empty mouth. So there's us and there's as. Both are the same. The only thing is one is full mouth, one is empty mouth. That's the only difference between the two. Pronunciation is the same. And they both sound the same as well. They both make a hissing sound. It's called safir. In Arabic language, the sifat of safir. It's a hissing sound. Sin and sad both make the same sound. The only thing is one is full mouth, one is empty mouth. So instead of nas, it's nas. Another thing is at the end of this ayah is wal fath. So these ayat, it has a sukoon on top of the ta. When it has a sukoon on top of the ta, which means that you have to connect it to the ta. And if you're stopping, you have to connect it to the ha as well. So there's two sukoons. And how do you read that? Easiest way to read that is practice saying just fat. Just keep saying fat. And then at the end of that, make a ha sound. Fat, fat. You can't say fatah. It's not fatah. You can't give a ta a fatha and say fatah. Because you have to connect it to the ta. So it's fat, fat. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا. So in wara, it's not wara, it's wara because the ra has a fatha on top. Ra mutaharrik, ra with any type of vowel on top of it. If it's a fatha or a dhamma, then it's always going to be full mouth. If it's kasra, zair, it's always going to be empty mouth. وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا. فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره. So fir, that ra, is going to be pronounced empty mouth, right? There's sukoon and the letter before has a kasra. So it's going to be fir. This is another example. Another example is fir'aun. You don't say fir'aun. You don't say wastaghfir. Fir. It's fir. Because it's empty mouth. And there's two has coming in the beginning. It's fasabbih, and then there's bihamdi. Now with ha, if you overpronounce it, it's going to start sounding like a kha. Ha, ha, ha. You start overpronouncing it, it's going to start sounding a little bit like kha. Kha has a different makhraj. Ha is a different makhraj. Be very careful. So it's fasabbih, and then bihamdi. You'll notice that all of these letters, fa, in fasabbih, sin, ba, ha, mim, dal, all of these are empty mouth letters. None of them are going to be pronounced full mouth. So it's fasabbih bihamdi, and then you go rabbika. There's actually only the ghain and the ra in this ayah. Wastagh, and then there's rabbika. Those are the only two letters that are full mouth. Rest of them are empty mouth. فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. إنه كان توابا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب. So in the end of this ayah, you'll oftentimes hear people saying instead of watab, instead of making the normal qalqala sound, the double sound, it's held a little bit. Right? Instead of saying watab, you say watab, watab. You see how I'm holding it a little bit? The reason for this is on top of the ba, you'll see a shadda. At the end of the ayah, you'll see a shadda on the ba, watab. Right? It's watabba if you connect it. No, if you're stopping, you don't pronounce it. If you're continuing, then you say watabba. If you're watabbama, if you're connecting it. If you're stopping there, you don't pronounce that fatha. See, this is you can say this is like a super qalqala. There's a couple of these in the Quran. A super qalqala basically means you have to hold the qalqala sound a little bit. You have to hold it. That's the reason why you say watab. You don't say watab. Like in قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. You don't say قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. But you find that in different ayat, right? In like when you're singing surah, when you're reading the word haqq, right? Sometimes it's haqq. Oftentimes when they're reciting the Quran, you say haqq. Inna dhalika lahaqq. There's a shadda on top of that letter. That's why it's like a super qalqala. You hold it for a little bit. Just like that in Surah Al-Lahab. You'll notice in all of the other qalqala in this ayah, in this surah, none of them have a shadda on top. In fact, you'll not notice that in any of the other surah, any of the other surahs in the rest of the surah. You'll only notice this in Surah Al-Lahab, the first ayah. Right? There are other examples as well. There's one example with ra. When there's a shadda and you're stopping on it, there's a different way of pronouncing that as well. You have to hold the ra a little bit. But over here we'll focus on the ba. Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tabb. ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب. Important part over here is just focus on the letters. Focus on the letters. Don't read through memory. Read through your eyes. When you read through the memory, when you're reading through your memory, you're not looking at the letters anymore. And when you're not looking at the letters, you're not focusing on the rules. So read with your eyes. That's why I want to read some of the Quran today. When you read from the Quran, then you can't read from memory because some of us don't have this memorized. So then we have to focus on the letters. Just like that, I want you to focus on each letter. That's the main thing over here. So ma aghna, the ghain is full mouth. So it's agh. And then there's a na, and then there's anhu. There's a ain over there, not alif. I'm sorry, not hamza. It's not anhu. It's anhu. ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب. And if everyone is having trouble making the ain sound, it's just practice. Keep saying just like the la is a very hard letter. I remember explaining this letter, right? It's when the back portion of the tongue touches the gums of the premolars and molars. That's how dad comes. Very difficult. Very difficult. It's not a normal letter at all. It's not a normal letter. It's one of the hardest letters. Like I said, there's books written on just this letter. That's how crazy this letter is. So it's a little bit hard. So just like that, we have to practice all of the other letters. Like gha, a. Next ayah. سَيَصْلَى نَارًا ذَاتَ لَهَبٍ وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ. Over here is difficult. This is when you actually can see the difference between ta and ta. Again, with your eyes you'll notice that's hammalata. There's a ta over there, and then it's ha tab. So it's hammalatal hatab. So ta and then ta. Full mouth, then empty mouth, then full mouth. Hammalatal hatab. And you can't say hammalatal hatab. Hatab is not right. And you can't say hammalatal hatab. Two different letters. So I have to hear the difference between the two letters. There must be an obvious difference between the letters. Because first off, they're not the same letter, so that means they're pronounced differently. حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ فِي جِيدِهَا حَبْلٌ مِّن مَّسَدٍ. Did you have a question? Which ones? You can if you wish. The ta just means that it's preferred to stop. Yeah, it's preferred to stop. If you want to continue, you can continue as well. So over here, fi jidiha habalum, there's a stretch over there, and then there's mim, another. So we went over this rule already. This is the rule of idgham nun sakin, right? Lun, habalun, that's tanween. Tanween is the same thing as nun sakin. You connect it to a mim, you have idgham nun sakin, one of the letters of idgham, incomplete idgham. So lum, and then there's min. Min and then ma. Mim masad. So this is again idgham. Nun sakin. Next surah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. You'll notice how strong Allah's name is over here. هُوَ اللَّهُ. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ. When you're saying Allah, the word Allah, you're literally using your whole mouth. Allah, Allah. There's a, then there's la, then back to ha. Right? It comes from, start from here, then you go up here, then you go back down. Allah, a, la, and then ha. Allah. We should practice saying, it's a great exercise and a dhikr as well. It's just repeating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, just repeating it over and over and over. Allahu Samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. You'll notice over here two rules. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ. يَكُنْ لَهُ. There's a nun sakin followed by lam. This is, what is this? Idgham nun sakin, correct? Idgham nun sakin. This is complete. The nun is completely merged into the lam. So it's not even pronounced. And when it's completely merged, there's no gunna. Other rule is kufuwan ahad. Kufuwan ahad. What rule is this? Idha. Yes, because there's a tanween after it is a. What letter is after the tanween? Hamza, correct? There's a hamza, and hamza is what are the letters of the throat letters. Hamza, ha, ayn, ha, ghayn, kha. So hamza is one of the throat letters. And when tanween, if after tanween or nun sakin there's a throat letter, then the nun is completely going to be pronounced, and there's going to be no gunna. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Important thing, you can't say yakullahu. It's not yakullahu, right? Lam is only full mouth in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name. Just lafdullah, that's all. Other than that, it's always going to be empty mouth. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ. Not وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ. Next surah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now pay attention, the a'udhu, this is the hardest part of this surah. The a and then ru, a'u. You can't say a'u, not a'u. I have to hear each letter. A'u, a'u. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. Important, sharri, not sharri. I explained this. This is one of the examples of sharri. Because ra is mushaddad, it has a tashdid, a shadda on top, and if it's a fatha or dhamma, it's going to be full mouth. If it's kasra, it's empty mouth. In this case, there's a kasra min sharri. Just because a sheen has a fatha before it, doesn't mean that ra will be read full mouth now. It's still going to be empty mouth. Min sharri ma khalaq. Wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab. وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. Make sure we do the ghunna. The ghunna, you have to stretch it. So rin, and then there's a min. وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. And there's a tha. The makhraj al-tha, tip of the tongue when touching the edge of the thanaya ulya, the top two teeth. That's how tha is pronounced. So we can't say sa. It's not sa, it's tha. وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس. را full mouth. رب. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس. Now all of these words, an-nas, they keep being, you're stretching them because it's noon mushaddad, right? Now noon has a shadda on top. Noon has a shadda on top, no matter what, there's going to be a ghunna. That is the rule that's applying for each of these. من شر الوسواس الخناس. Now kha is a full mouth letter, correct? The first one is kha. So kha is not khannas. Khannas is wrong, it's khannas. Do you see the difference? It's very subtle. It's not khannas, it's khannas. من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. I have it written up here too. Let me just get the ayat out. Any hafal over here? I forgot which surah, which ayat this is. Give me 1 second. Let me just make sure I know the ayat. So we can also read it from the Quran. So it's Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 268. If anyone wants to read from the Quran, I also have it up here. If anyone wishes to read from the Quran as well. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 268. From this Quran over here, it's on page 46. On page 46. Because the only reason is that we're going to be reading from this Quran anyway. For the rest, majority of our lives at least, we're going to be reading from a Quran that probably doesn't have tajweed rules. So it's better to try to implement the rules. This has all color coded, so it's easy to see. The reason I'm asking is if you want to read it from here and see, and take off your training wheels and try to read it from here and try to identify the rules, that's fine too. So does everyone have it out? Ayah 268, page 46, Surah Al-Baqarah. It's in third juz. You found it? Anyone having trouble finding it? I can quickly open it if you can't find it. Yeah, the beginning of that ayah. Okay. You guys have it? Okay. So we'll start reading from there, inshallah. I personally prefer reading from here too. So I'm going to read here and then I'll identify the rules on the screen as well. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. So over here, make sure the ta, full mouth, faq, that's also a full mouth, faqra. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء. So it's not highlighted in this in the slide is, but after kum bil fahsha, wa ya'murukum bil fahsha. So over here, what rule is this? There's a rule that's over here. Ikhfa mim sakin, mashallah. Ikhfa mim sakin is a mim sakin, after it there's a letter ba. Wa ya'murukum bil fahsha. So you have to stretch it for 1 second. Gunna. Wallahu ya'idukum maghfiratan minhu wa fadla. Again, magh, is that magh, maghfira. There's two full mouth letters. Maghfiratan minhu and then fadla. Full mouth letters, we really have to pay attention to them. I'm going to read this whole part together. Wallahu ya'idukum maghfiratan minhu wa fadla. Wallahu wasi'un alim. It's un'a, two ains back to back. So we have to pronounce each one. Wallahu wasi'un alim. Again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with reading slow. Nothing wrong with reading slow. So oftentimes we want to read as fast as we can, but we mispronounce the letters. It's better to read slow with tajweed than to read fast and complete more. يؤتي الحكمة من يشاء ومن يؤت الحكمة. So when you're stopping on the hamza, it's yu. So make sure you have that it's called like a jhatka sound. Like, you know, when you're speeding and then the light turns red and you have to stop suddenly. That's like the sound of hamza. It's like you stop. So yu. وَمَن يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. That rule. What is that rule? Ranka. What rule is that? Ikhfa nun sakin. Ikhfa nun sakin. Anyone know all 15 letters off the top of their head? Anyone had a chance to review them? After, for nun sakin, ikhfa nun sakin, remember I said there's 15 letters. We should try memorizing. Anyone had a chance to memorize them? Yeah, excluding huruf halqiyya, excluding letters of idgham, excluding ba, all of these. The rest are letters that come that have ikhfa, and there's 15 of them. So we should try memorizing them. Ta, tha, jim, not ha, kha, da, ta, tha, jim, dal, dal, ra, no, not ra, za, sin, shin, sa, da, ta, da, fa, qaf, kaf. So there's 15 of them. We should try to memorize all 15 of them. وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. So a lot of a over here. It's illa and then u and then albab. So you have to make sure you pronounce all of the a. Illa ulul albab. وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن نَفَقَةٍ أَوْ نَذَرْتُم مِّن نذر فإن الله So over here, nadhar, this is not nadhar, nadhar, right? Because there's a ra, sakin, before it there's a dal with a what? Fatha on top, correct? So it's going to be read full mouth. So nadhar, tum, and then this tum min. So tum, that's mim. Over here you see mim mushaddad. I'm sorry, this is idgham, mim sakin. You see the mim sakin, right after that there's a mim. Correct? This is yarmalun, and then the 4 idgham naqis, incomplete idgham. There's 4 letters, ya, waw, mim, nun. So there's a mim right after that mim. So this is going to be idgham mim sakin. And there's going to be ghunna. Min nadhrin. So this is nun sakin. And over here nun sakin is after that there's a nun. So over here, this is just going to be considered like a shadda over here because it's min nathirin. So because of that, there's going to be a stretch. Now, ghunna. And nathirin fa'in. So this is what? Ikhfa nun sakin. Right? Because fa is one of the letters that if after tanween or sakin, if fa appears, there's going to be ikhfa. Inna Allah nun mushaddad again. We'll read this ayah one more time. وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن نَفَقَةٍ أَوْ نَذَرْتُم مِّن نَذْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُهُ وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ. So it's min an. Why? Because there's a noon sakin and after is a hamza. So which rule is this? Idhar noon sakin. Idhar noon sakin, you don't make any ghunna, you make the noon very apparent. So min and sad is one of the letters which if it comes after a noon sakin, there's going to be ikhfa noon sakin. وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ. إِن تُبْدُوا الصَّدَقَاتِ فَنِعِمَّا هِيَ إن تبدوا الصدقات فنعما هي وإن تخفوها وتؤتوها الفقراء Fuqara, not fuqara. Fuqara, because ra has a fatha on top, so it's going to be full mouth. وَتُؤْتُوهَا الْفُقَرَاءَ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. Over here you'll notice this is idgham, nun sakin, خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. But it's complete because it completely merges into the lam. That's why there's no gunna. فهو خير لكم ويكفر عنكم من سيئاتكم والله بما تعملون خبير. Interesting enough that this is a good example for khabir. I don't know if you guys remember the ra rule, right? The third exclusion for ra, when there's a ra sakin, before it is another letter with a sakin, before that is a letter with a kasra or fatha or dhamma. What happens? Now that was divided into two. First one was that is there a ya sakin before the ra sakin? If there's a ya sakin, khalas is going to be empty mouth. If there isn't a ya sakin, then we have to look at the letter before that again. If it's a fatha or dhamma, it's full mouth, kasra, it's empty mouth. Example is right over here. It's khabir. So you stop there, so ra is going to have a sakin. Now before that ra sakin is which letter? Between the ra and ba there's a letter. There's a ya. There's a ya between the ra and ba. Now like I said, the ya also has a sakin. If the ya has a sakin, the ra, no matter what, is going to be read empty mouth. So it's khabir. Wallahu bima ta'maluna khabir. Sadaqallahu al-azim. Inshallah, we'll end over there. Tomorrow there's a couple more rules. There's only one more rule I want to discuss, the main important rules. I'm trying to go over the important rules for tajweed. So last rule we'll go over is mad. When to stretch and how to stretch, and different specific places of stretching. Like over here you'll notice in fuqara'a. Why am I stretching it for that long? Instead of saying fuqara'a. There's a reason for that. We'll go over the reasons for that tomorrow inshallah, and we'll do a little bit more reading. Other than that, inshallah ta'ala, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq to implement the rules of tajweed and give us everlasting relationship with the Quran. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Brothers are requested to rest up, inshallah. It's going to be a long night with the Khatm al-Quran and the dua as well, so please rest up, inshallah. Jazakallahu Khairun.